Hi everyone, it is almost Christmas time here, and this year I've been thinking a little bit about what to do for Christmas and different ways of doing decorations. So I started off with the idea that I'm going to do a Christmas decoration, and I'm like, "Oh, what am I going to do? Maybe I'll do a bauble or a snowflake or a star or something along those lines." And I started doing the little testing and I'm messing around with them. And I realized that what I really like to knit is sweaters. And so, before I knew what happened, I had done a whole series of baby sweaters, these tiny, little, top-down sweaters with small stripes. And you know what? They're actually great fun to knit. So I thought you might like to knit along with me. These are going to have, I've put them up on the shop, but I mean, the pattern by itself will go up as well with the workshop. But basically what it's going to be is you can just get a little hanger, stick it in, and you can use them as actual decorations on the tree. And if you haven't done top-down raglan sweaters before and you would like to learn how to do it, they're a really, really good way of learning because you'll go through all of the techniques. You're going to learn how to join the round, do magic loop. You will learn how to increase raglan shoulder seams, how to remove the sleeves, join the body and the round with underarm, and then finish off the sleeves. So like they're teeny tiny, but every single technique gets practiced in them. So if you want a very interesting Christmas decoration and or a way of learning how to do top-down raglan seamless sweaters in a tiny little format, then I think this is the one for you. We've been having way too much fun making these little sweaters. They are very, very small, but they are twofold, two interesting things you can do with it. The first one is it's a very good way of learning each of the different techniques that's in it. And secondly, they make the cutest little decorations. We've got very small little hangers that you can just kind of pin into place here, and they make just super cute decorations. We also have got tons and tons of these little coral minis in like probably 30, 40, 50 different colors. They're only 20 grams. They normally would be used for things like stripes and different products and stuff. But we actually reckon that they would be perfect for this because these take all in all about 12 to 13 grams of yarn with about 9 to 10 of the main color and then 2 or 3 of the stripe. So you can use the same colors and then reverse them over and you'll get 2 little sweaters out of each of them. You can do any method you like for doing a small circle in the round. If you've got a really teeny circular needle, it's probably not going to do it because these are a bit small, but for the rest of it, like when you get to here, it would work. My preferred method is magic loops. So I've got big, long cord here. I think this one's 32. That works pretty well for it. Or you can use double pointed needles would be another one that's great for little decorations. You can use any size. I'm using these ones are, 2.75 millimeters is the size I'm using. I've got another one here. It's a 2.25, also works very well. The gauge I've given in the pattern is the 2.75. And when I'm doing it in bamboo, my gauge tends to be a little looser, so it's ever so slightly looser. These haven't been blocked yet. They will be a little bit more even and the ends woven in. I did this one on the metal one. And I mean, interestingly, with metal, I find I have to hold my yarn much tighter, so I tend to get a snugger gauge, but it's not as comfortable. It's kind of hard in my hands. So what I've discovered is the stitch gauge is almost the same. You can see there's very little, like it's a tiny bit narrower, but not much. Biggest difference is actually in the length. They tend to, it's a bit more compressed lengthwise. So you can, but I mean, again, these are decorations, so gauge is not critical. So I'd say any small needle you have between 2 and 3 millimeters is going to work just fine, either long circular for magic loop or double pointed needles. Begins at the top with a cast on. Use any cast on you want. You join in the round. You work a few rounds straight down to create the little cowl neck here. And then you begin raglan increases. So you've got markers, or in the case of one of them, it's kind of the start of the round. And on each side, you've got a knit front and back. So knit front and back here, 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 and over here. So you end up with 8 increases on the increase rounds, and then you've got a second round where you just knit around. And you do that for, let me take a look at it here. Altogether, I had, where is it? Up here. It's 6 rounds in total increasing. Then you remove the sleeves and you work this from the top down the body. And I've introduced just a series of 3 stripes. You could do just a block of color, you can do different stripes, kind of anything you want. I will show you my preferred method for avoiding stripes in the round here. I'll kind of do that when we move on to the video. And then I picked up stitches around the armhole, and there's a few methods I use for trying to avoid holes here. Particularly in small stitches and cotton, it tends to be very prone to holes in the underarm area. So these ones aren't too bad. So I'll show you my method for doing that as well. And then just a couple of decreases and bind off. And they are so cute. They're a little bit addictive. We will warn you that you'll find before long that you just keep making more and more of these. But come on in and we'll get started with our cast on. Working around here now, and I'm up to, I think, 21. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 21. And I'm just going to cast on 3 more stitches. I use a thumb method of the long tail cast on. So you scoop it from behind like this, wrap that over and pull that on. 1, 2, and 3. Any cast on that you like the look of is going to work just fine here. Just going to use long tail thumb method is my preferred. So now I'm going to show you how we set up to work in the round for Magic Loop. So I'm going to put these in the middle and make sure they're all nice and even. Fold it in on itself, kind of holding it together like this, keeping my working yarn in the back, finding the middle to pull out just like so, and trying to hold these in place. I'm just going to slip the front ones up to the top here and pull this out. So when you're doing Magic Loop, 2 things to remember. First one is you want a loop out here and a loop out here. And you always want your working yarn coming from the back. And you want to make sure that your working yarn is on the side that you need it on so that you're not going to loop it over like this when you come to join in the round. Generally, when I'm joining, I'll go into the first one, trying to hold. You can see I'm using this finger here to kind of hold the 2 together, and then I'll let go. When I do the first stitch, or maybe even the second stitch, give a little tug, but even better still on the second one, tug it some more. And keep on knitting along here. Once I've finished this side, I just flip over onto the other side. And that's all Magic Loop is. I think of it as, it's like having 2 double pointed needles here, but instead of having several other ones, the rest of them's just sitting on the cord back here. So when we finish that one, turn it around so that you're, oh, I missed my last stitch here. Don't know how that happened, but it does happen. There we go. Flip around, keep my working yarn in the back, slide this down, keeping my stitches all straight. Particularly at the start, they want to twist around, so you have to be very careful that they maintain the correct position. So I'll often kind of try and hold them all together like this. So slide that to the top, pull this out, so I'm back to my bow tie, and then I'll join around on the other side here and keep working through. You'll probably notice as well that when I'm doing Magic Loop, the beginning of round marker doesn't exist as such because it's at the start here where your tail is. So when I begin, I just use the tail as my beginning round marker. As I move further up, if I'm a little concerned that I'm going to lose track of where I am, I'll just put a marker on the actual work itself and move it up along with it. So I'm going to keep going here and finish 2 more rounds like this, and then I'll show you how we set up our raglan increases. All right, I've been working along here. I've done the first 3 rounds, just knitting round the loop, and then I've done the setup round where I've put my markers in. See here, my starter round tail, that's the indicator that that's the start of my round. And what I did here is I put knit 3 stitches, put a marker knit 9 stitches, and if you weren't using magic loop, or if you had positioned your magic loop differently, this is effectively another marker is what I'm viewing it as here. Knit another 3, marker, and the final 9. What that's going to be is these 3 over here and these 3 over here are each of our sleeves here on these sides, and then the 9 in the front and the 9 in the back are the front and the back. So what we'll end up doing every time we encounter a marker, whether our real or our imagined start of round or division of size here, it's going to be a knit front and back. So this is going to be our increase round here. So let me get myself set up a magic loop. First one is going to be knit front and back because I'm just after my imaginary start of round marker. Knit into the front a stitch, flip around into the back. With cotton, because it's got no elasticity, you have to be kind of fairly careful on those to snug it up. Then we're going to knit 1 stitch before the marker, which is only a single stitch in this particular case because it's only 3 stitches. We'll do our knit into the front and knit into the back of it. There we go. Slip the marker and then we'll knit into the front and the back of the stitch. And next we will knit all the way around to our next marker where, because I'm using my division here of the side of the magic loop, it's going to be the last stitch on this needle. So knit as far as this, knit into the front and the back of that stitch. So now I've got half of my raglan increase round done. Turn around, slip this down, keeping my working yarn in the back. Slip the stitches I want to work on up to the front of this needle and get started again. And here we go, our knit front and back. That stitch for 1 increase. You can of course change the increase type you want. Just for this, knit front and back creates kind of a nice little series of bars going down here. And for such a simple little pattern, it seemed like the most straightforward increase to use. So here we go, next knit front and back. This one, slip my marker, knit into the front and back. And we're almost at the end. We're just going to knit to the last stitch before the marker, or the last stitch on the needle for me. And it will be my last raglan increase. Knit into the front and knit into the back. So there we go. We have 8 increases, and my next round I'm just going to knit all the way around. Then I'll do that increase round again, and there'll be 5 more increase rounds. When you're finished, I'll come back, we'll check our stitch counts, and then we'll start dividing for the sleeves. So just continue on down and do your increases up to that point. Let's take a look at the raglan now. You can see that it's complete and we've got the 4 different sections. There's the sleeves out on each side and the front and the back of the body, with each of them divided up with that marker. What we're going to do now is take the sleeves off on each side, put them in waste yarn and join them underneath on both sides. You can see here how that immediately starts to make it look like a sweater once you do that. The way we're going to do that now is we're going to take the waste yarn I've got here on a needle, a darning needle, and we will slip all of those sleeve stitches onto that darning needle, 1 stitch at a time. You want to take care as well that you don't split the stitches, and when you reach the end of it, you'll take that marker off. If you're doing a bigger garment, you might still hold on to a marker, but for this, you don't need to. So we'll pull those through and hold on to the end of it so that we can thread it through. Also, for a bigger garment, you would tie the strings together here as well. See the way I've just left the strings loose because it's so small, there's no reason to tie a knot in it together. But that would be done if it was a big garment because it's going to be tried on and you'll be stretching it around. Now, when we join it underneath, we're going to want to do a cast on. I usually will turn this backwards to do a cable cast on across the underarm because I find that to be the best way of actually creating a firm join underneath. We do that by going back to where the yarn is, up on the back, wrong side of the work, and snug the stitch up, go in between the first 2 stitches, wrap the yarn around and pull it through for the first cable cast on, and we do it again between the next two and pull that through and pop it on. Now we're going to turn our work around, and we'll have to reorientate our needles here again to set the magic loop up. And then we're going to join the back to the front. Be careful that you bring your yarn around to the right place so that it's not twisted around the needle. And also you want to kind of hold the two together so that you create a join. You will find that you get a little bit of a loose stitch down at the underarm area here. That's often one of the downsides of this type of construction. There's a couple of ways that we can kind of correct it as we go through. The one that I've done in this particular one is when we go and pick up the sleeves, I actually pick up an extra stitch in the gap between the stitches that were cast on and the original stitches, and that helps a little bit to kind of close the gap. But there are other ways as well if you're doing a bigger garment. But for this, that's, I think, plenty sufficient. So I'm just knitting all the way through on the front of the body here. And once we reach the end, I'm going to do the exact same thing on the other side for the second sleeve. So almost done here. Turn myself around and pull it through. And I'm just going to slide these up to the top so I can take those next sleeve stitches off. So I'm again going to need to find, oh, it's gotten caught here. You see where the new stitches were cast on, it just got caught. Just looking for that waste yarn. I think I'm going to probably have to go find a new bit of yarn to pull off here. If you're organized, you will have 2 little strands of waste yarn to go. For waste yarn, the best thing to use is generally a firm yarn that is not going to break too easily and doesn't have too many loose bits of string coming off it so that it'll slip out more easily. So I'll thread up my darning needle, and I'm just going to go do the same thing here. Slip all of those stitches on, the same as I did for the first side. So now we'll have it matching with the sleeve out on each side. Work my way through. Do take care not to split any of those stitches as you're going through. Almost at the end here. And let's go pull off that marker. Slip this through the same as we did on the first side. And then we're going to again join the second side just the exact same as we did with the first, and knit in the round until we reach the point where I'm going to start my body stripes. And when I get there, I'll show you how you can do jogless stripes. You can see it done here where I've avoided those stripes. So good technique to learn. Been working my way along my little teeny tiny sweater. I started off with the main color. I did 3 rounds. Then I did 2 rounds in a stripe, 2 rounds in the main color, 2 rounds in the stripe, and now I'm back to 2 rounds in the main color and just about to introduce my next stripe. But I wanted to show you how I actually start alternating back over my different colors. So normally if I was going to work, this is going to be the next color I would go with, but I want to stripe. So what I'm actually going to do is, you can see that I've got the 2 colors kind of running side by side down here. And when I bring the new color up, bring it up from underneath. And what that does is, see, it anchors the original color a little bit up. So it helps prevent too much of a gap as you are at, let me tighten this up. It helps prevent too much of a gap at the start of the round. And then you just head away off working on the second color, the stripe color that you want to introduce. One of the problems when you're working stripes of color in the round, where you change your color, you can actually get quite a dramatic jog between the start of one round and the end of the next round. So all you want to do is take the leg of the stitch from the row below the original color, put it up on the needle with the new color, and knit those 2 together. And then you just continue on. And let's get started now on working the sleeve for the sweater. Move this to the side. I've done the first one. And the way you want to work the sleeve is you start on the underarm, like around about the middle. And remember, we had cast on 2 stitches here. So you pick up 1 stitch, then there's kind of a gap. So you'll pick up a stitch in the gap. Then come back to those stitches that were held, knit them all, and then on the other side, pick up a stitch from the gap, usually a little further back here so that you don't create a big hole, and do the final one. Then at that point, you can join in the round for magic loop again. So let's go see how this works. First things first, I will always slide all of these stitches onto the needle because it's way easier to work the whole thing once they're actually up on the needle, because then you've got them all ready to go. Almost there. So now this last few. You will find as well when you're picking up stitches from a needle like this that often you end up with the last one where it kind of dips down. You see the way this one dips down here? What you need to do is kind of, you can pull that up and you want to get this back up onto the needle. There we go. Now pull this waste yarn out. It's caught a bit here. There. Okay, so got round about half each side. It's not too critical. And I'll usually then slide this down here to be able to, that to the side, to be able to get started. So we'll start in the middle here. There's a stitch over here and a stitch here. So I'm going to go in, just stick it right into the base of that stitch. Get hold, leave a good bit of a tail. Tail is nice here because you can actually hide all the holes underneath. So we'll do that first one here. Pull that through. Try that again. My tail didn't want to be held. Pull the first stitch through. There we go. Only half got it, but we can pull the whole thing. I got the whole thing on. There we go. I got a stitch. Pop it in here. Now, first stitch. Next one, I'm going to go up here, and you can see I'm moving back a little bit so that I'm not going to create that hole. Then I'm going to go to the next one. And I'm going to grab my tail here a little bit and pull this over, because that really helps to anchor it down. If you lift it up, lift it down, and then I will just drop it down and just work my way around. Magic loop, very same as the body. The only real difference being here that because it's a sleeve, it's just a much, much smaller amount of stitches. So you've got much bigger loops coming out each end with this. Put this over, pop this on. Yeah, almost ready to go here. When we get to the other end, then I'll just have the stitch from the gap again, the same as the first one, and the underarm one. So let me see here. You can either pick it up with this one or you can go straight in with this. I'm going to pop in here. I'm going to go knit this. Then I might get help with this. So I'm going to then take a look, and here's the top of the stitch here. I'm going to go and knit into that. So now I've got all my stitches picked up. I've minimized the holes I would have at the underarm by picking up a hole in the gap. And I'm going to go knit in the round for a few rounds, and then I'll show you how to do that decrease. I've worked 3 rounds, just knitting round and round, and I'm going to do the first decrease round now. We do decreases at both the start and the end of the round. The first one is just going to be a knit 2 together. So I'm just going to knit into these 2 stitches at the very start of the round, and then snug that up again, and I'm going to then keep going to the very last 2 stitches, and I'll do a matching one, which will be an SSK. So we get here, almost around. And there's only going to be a couple of decrease rounds for the sleeve because the sleeves are teeny tiny. So it'll be this one, a couple of rounds straight, and then one more decrease round. And then you knit a few more rounds and you do your bind off. Nearly there now. To the last 2 stitches. And we'll do an SSK or a slip slip knit. First one is slip knitwise, next one slip knitwise, coming into the front here and knit like that. So there we go. I'm now going to go do a couple more rounds, another decrease round, a few more, and then finish it at the end. And that's all you have to do. And then what you'll do is weave your ends in, and if you've got a little hanger, you can just sew it in position and you're ready to hang your decoration.